Namaste everyone. Welcome to the Cārvāka podcast. This is your host Kushalmehra. So the GST reforms 2.0 are in. As you guys know, the announcement has been made by now the Finance Ministry and all the concerned departments. The 56th Council, if I remember correctly, the GST Council has given its verdict, and the new rate regime is finally in. There has been a lot of discussion around it. I don't pretend to understand half of it because as India में ऐसे laws बनाए जाते हैं that they are made to confuse you, but apparently they are not as confusing as people think they are. And to clear all the confusion, as always, it's very nice to have friends who are experts. So I reached out to Ajay on WhatsApp. I was like, Ajay, bhai, please come on the podcast. And Ajay, as always, says yes. Ajay, thank you very much once again for coming.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here again.
So, first of all, your initial remarks on the reforms as is, where is they are, and then we'll get into the nitty gritties. So, let's start with that. What do you make of the reforms as they are announced?
So I think, firstly, very good, was much needed. This was needed, and this is a natural course correction. And we'll discuss as to why it's a natural course correction as we move along in today's conversation. So what has really happened is we had four different rates at which goods and services could have been taxed under GST. You had a 5%, 12%, 18%, and 28%. And then you had a cess on top of 28. Now we are just down to three rates. Most of the things fall under 18%. And then there's a merit rate, which is 5%, which is for essentials, something that's absolutely needed for a daily basis, and 40% for sin goods like pan masala, tobacco products, aerated drinks, and luxury goods, which is larger cars and things like that. Therefore, there's just one rate into which everything should fall, which is 18, merit rate into which essentials fall, and the demerit rate into which luxury falls. So this is as close to a single rate of GST as we can get to. And in my view, I don't think we are ready for a single rate. So therefore, this, in my view, is the really the next best alternative that we had. And the GST is, in my view, GST 2.0, worth calling it that, has really evolved into a much better tax regime than what it used to be.
So, why? Let's have this argument at its face value. Why is a tax structure where there are lesser number of tax rates better than a tax structure per se which has, let's say, more tax rates? Previously we had, effectively, as you had explained in one of our discussions, that we had like what, 9 taxes of GST that you had explained.
Oh, we had much more. So I think that's where we start, which is how did GST come in? GST was, sort of a lot of state and central levies got subsumed into GST. So before GST, the right to levy tax on goods was with the state governments, and right to levy tax on services was with the central government, which is why we had service tax separate, and then we had on goods, which was sales tax at one point, and thereafter we had the VAT, value added tax. And there was a separately excise duty which applied whenever something was manufactured. So let's say this, a computer keyboard, a monitor, somebody manufactures, they pay excise duty, and after that they sell, they used to pay a VAT. And VAT was state-wise. So Karnataka had a different VAT, Tamil Nadu had a different VAT, and so on. The laws were different, rates were different, compliances were different. Therefore, when goods had to move between borders, they had to check, and then you had those long queues, checkposts, and logistics was a nightmare. Too much paperwork, all of those. So GST essentially started as one tax, one country, and which is what it is, merged everything. And because you were merging state levies and central levies, goods and services, states were giving up their right to tax goods, and therefore you had to come up with a mechanism where you would do a dual structure. So that's why GST is, some goes to state, some goes to center, oversimplifying it, but that's how it works. And therefore they came up with this concept that, and this was in the constitution, that the rate will be decided by the GST council, not by any particular minister. If you remember, Kushal, before GST came, budget day, most of the papers the next day morning would be what is becoming expensive, what is becoming cheap. You would say computers are expensive, TVs are cheaper, and whatever, so on. Cigarettes would always go up, and that's because the taxes were decided by the central government on excise duty and service tax, and therefore would get announced in the budget. Now, the entire tax rate and the law making is with GST Council, which is a body of both the state government and central government. Central government has one third votes, and the state government has the rest two thirds. We have not voted, but that's how it is. So, therefore, this is really a federal structure with so many things moving into one single levy. Now, why so many rates and what's the difference? That's where we started. The reason we had so many rates to begin with is because states were losing. So the center actually told them that we will assure you that you will get the revenue that you are getting today and much more with a growth rate. So they were being compensated. So you couldn't have a situation where a particular item was being taxed at 20 odd percent in Karnataka, 18% in Tamil Nadu, and you couldn't move it to 5% or 12% overnight. You would lose revenue. So you came up with these too many rates to ensure, one, there was not huge revenue loss, and second, there was also no impact on inflation. You could move everything to a higher rate, and therefore we started with so many rates. What is the problem with so many rates? That's a question that you had, which is a very important question. Is because the moment you have more rates, you need to classify goods. So you will classify goods based on the rate. You will say all of these goods are at 5%, the other goods are at 12, and few others at 18. How do you classify goods? Business changes regularly. Innovation is there. New products come. You can't have a menu or a laundry list to say these are the goods. So how does it work globally? Is there is a harmonized system where all goods are put into certain categories, and then there are residual categories, and you do the classification based on that. So what does that lead to? The most famous popcorn story. Why popcorns got taxed at different rates? Because when they started the classification, I don't think anybody in their wildest dreams thought that somebody would go and add caramel to popcorn or sugar to popcorn. Popcorn was always with, salt or pepper or whatever. So what happened was popcorn with caramel suddenly got classified as a confectionery with sugar. And those, because you had to limit use of sugar, unhealthy usage, etc., were at 18%, rest of the popcorn was at 5%. And that is what happens when you have too many rates, is you will have what we tax nerds call as classification disputes. Where do you classify the goods? Another very famous litigation went on for years for Nestle is on the Kit Kat case, whether Kit Kat is a chocolate with a wafer inside it or a wafer with a chocolate coating. Because wafers were at a different rate, chocolate was at a different rate. Therefore, having fewer rates reduces this thing, because if every food item is at 5%, then it doesn't matter what you categorize it at, where it gets classified. So today, we have at a very large level, and according to me, in my personal view, I'm really thrilled at the amount of rationalization that has happened. Most essentials, most things which we consume on a daily basis, food items, packed food, biscuits, chocolates, all of it has become 5%. So therefore, nobody is going to see what is the ingredients of a popcorn, what has been put in that, whether cheese is there, sugar is there, caramel is there. So we've reduced the number of rates. That brings down the classification disputes, which is the biggest litigation area between the taxpayer and the government on indirect taxes. So last point, the revenue secretary actually brought this up to say that these classification disputes were not even yielding us revenue. It was just time consuming, and it was also blocking our resources. Therefore, the fewer classification dispute, the better it is for everybody. So going forward, I think 22nd September onwards, in my view, the classification disputes on GST will come down significantly.
So let's spend some time on the classification disputes. Now, this is something that I am worried about, what the government has put in the luxury category or the sin goods
Right.
category. Yeah, I still feel we should just do away with that. Don't you think we would have been better off? But do you think the political backlash was the reason that the government just said, "Ha, theek hai, amiro ki thoko," kind of a thing? The perception is, oh, this government is pro rich, that's why this is done. And the ease of doing business is still not considered. I am not saying this is not a bad reform, I am saying it is an awesome reform. But do you think sometimes the public perception comes into this whole calculation?
So I don't think it is because of it being because of rich etc. I'll tell you the reason is I don't think we are today, in my view, ready for a single rate to say tax everything at 15%, 18%, 14%, whatever that rate may be. Because we are still a poor country, our income levels are low. Therefore, the essential goods have to be at a lower rate. They can't be at the median rate of 10, 12, whatever percentage we take. Nor can we have a single rate because we today still as a country rely a lot on indirect taxes collection. So what are the two different taxes? They're direct tax and indirect tax. Direct is income tax, which is on your income, and indirect tax is whatever we pay on goods and services. The fundamental difference between the two is that on a direct tax, if you and I earn income, you and I go file our returns of income and pay the tax, which is a voluntary compliance. We have to disclose the return, disclose our income, file the return, and pay the taxes, which is a pathetic level of compliance in India. We've discussed this so many times. A single digit percentage of people file income taxes. Therefore, India collects very little from income tax than what it should ordinarily have collected. So don't go by the lakhs crores that we collect, but more as a percentage given to our population. So we still rely a lot on indirect taxes because it is easy to collect. There's less leakage. It happens at the point of sale. You and I can't avoid it. You go and take, which used to happen during the earlier days that you would say, give me without bill, I'll give you in cash, which is reduced. So when indirect tax collections are high, then you're collecting it from everybody. Therefore, we still rely on indirect taxes. Now, US, for example, relies a lot more on personal tax collections, but we rely on GST collections. So we couldn't have got down all of the GST to 5%, 8%. Still, collection is important. So if a set of goods are being taxed at 5%, where do I collect the revenue? So I will go and collect it from people who are having the ability to pay. Therefore, I draw this distinction of footwear about 2,500 rupees. Now, whether it has to be 2,500, 5,000, 10,000 is something we can discuss, really doesn't matter. But you're drawing a line to say, I will start calling something as luxury goods and let those people, because they have the ability to pay a little more. That's the whole thing of this luxury goods, because it has an element of the revenue angle to it, to collect revenue.
So this is the effective new regime. This was posted by the government of India.
Right.
And now I had a question here. Now on this cess business, just a personal question. Now, is this cess on GST like the income tax cess? Like how, how the income tax cess is calculated? Let's say I pay 100 rupees as a baseline
Yes.
tax. That cess is on the 100 rupees tax value.
Correct.
So in GST, it's not like that, right?
No.
GST where the cess is on the whole value too.
Whole value. So what happens, Kushal? Cess came because it's a compensation cess. So again, we go back to history. When GST came in, the central government told the states, for 5 years, I'll compensate you if there's any revenue loss. You lose any money, I'll give it to you. The first time when 2010 GST was to be implemented, that was the date set. GST could not get implemented while there's a lot of political discussion around it as to why it didn't happen, etc. One of the key reasons is because the central government of that time did not really have the ability to completely commit to say we will compensate you for the losses. That was one of the reasons. The other was we were not ready. Our IT infrastructure was not ready. Our IT systems were not as they were in 2016, 17 when we implemented finally. In 17, when we implemented, the central government said, listen, we will take 15, 16 as the base. All you states, you're giving up your right to tax. If you lose revenue more than a 14% growth that I expect to happen, I will make up the difference. I will give you the difference for first 5 years. Now, for those 5 years, how would the central government have collected? So they said, we will collect this compensation cess with which we'll compensate the states. Now, that's how that compensation cess came in. You are absolutely right. Cess in indirect tax, in the way GST works, is not if 100 rupee goods, 28 rupees GST, the cess is not on 28, the cess is also on 100. So when we had large cars, which were even at cess of 12%, we were 22% actually. So we were paying 22% GST, 28% GST, 22% cess. So we were actually paying 50% on a large car. On cars which were big, there were a category of cars where the GST was actually 50%. In that, 22% was the cess.
So effectively, even large cars have become cheaper by some percentage points, right?
Correct. Even large cars have become cheaper by some percentage points, because some those which were at the 22% cess will be cheaper by 10% of GST.
So like I checked this news on the textile, uh, like ready-made garments attracting 5% GST, 2500 ke upar.
Correct.
Now I don't think people realize like costs have gone up too.
Right.
So I think they should have made this probably 3,500 or something if they wanted to, because 2,500 will still impact the middle class. Middle class does do this shopping, and it would have been unfair. Mm,
No, right. I
uh,
agree with you, because, like I said, whether that number, what it has to be, and whether they will reset it once in a way. Even cars, if you take Kushal, anything about 1200 cc and 4000 is a large car. Which now this 1200 cc came in I think 2006 or 7, when Chidambaram
yeah.
was the finance minister, and he brought in a differential excise duty on these two cars. At that point, if you remember, there was this Ford Icon Josh machine of India, which was
Yes,
one of
yes,
the
yes.
few cars which were above 1200 cc. Most of
Mm.
our cars at that time was below 1200. Today, how many cars do we actually get below 1200 cc
Yes.
which are considered luxury?
Not
Uh,
only that, even that shoes about 2,500 are considered
2500.
luxury. Arey Baba, there are
Correct.
no shoes.
I agree. So, like I said, where you draw that line is something that is open for discussion. But as a country today, should some of the goods be taxed at a higher rate, both from a revenue perspective and also because of the income levels and inequality that's there? I personally don't see anything wrong in that as a policy.
Fair enough. Okay, because we are on the luxury goods. So somebody has said 40% tax on luxury goods, skills, innovation. Any new tech comes in as luxury and then trickles down, and the luxury threshold is very low compared globally. Now, here's the thing: people have not realized that actually the effective tax rate on luxury also has come down. Even I did not
Correct.
realize it, because I
Yeah.
made the mistake when I had tweeted of assuming that the cess calculation is like the one on income tax. Little did I know that the GST calculation on cess was not like the one on income
Correct.
tax. So actually effective tax rates on luxury goods have also come down. The proof of that is BMW and many other cars have
Yes.
already announced a 1.5 se 2 lakh,
They are
2.5 lakh, 3 lakh ka tax
correct.
reduction, amount reduction on their
Correct.
cars. But how do you answer something like this?
So, innovation, yes, of course, in luxury, but if you see, it's not in all categories of goods. For example, mobile phones or televisions or white goods like refrigerator, etc. They've not put any of those. You have only select few today. Cars is one where they have drawn that clear thing. Bike is another one where they have drawn that at 350 cc. Other than that, it's not like it's across in all goods. It's not that if you buy a handbag worth more than a particular thing, it becomes luxury, or it's not because of a brand or anything. But yes, so in some of the places where this luxury goods is there, it could get impacted. But for me, the larger thing is, the more we expand our base on income tax, the more there is collection of income tax, and need not be with a higher tax rate, but with the base going wider and larger. The ability to reduce indirect tax increases for the government, because even
Yeah.
today there is a steep reduction in indirect taxes, what we used to pay even when GST came in, to what it is today.
Yeah. Now you're right, because in air conditioners we've gone from 28% to 18%, and in television above 22 inches, excluding some, it has gone down to monitors and projectors. It has gone down. Dishwashing machines, it has gone down. So
And
a lot of things that the middle class would eventually consume has actually come down. I was just looking at the entire
so if
rate.
you see, air conditioning was at 28 because it was considered a luxury.
So they no longer consider air
Yeah.
conditioner a luxury,
Yes.
which is
So
good.
I think, which is good. I think that's where we will get to as we move along. I don't think some of these are cast in stone.
Oh, sorry, television above 32 inches. I'm sorry,
No,
I
see,
missed
that
that.
is because there was differential between below 32 and above 32. Now they have almost done away with that to say everything is taxed at the same rate. Earlier,
Mm.
above 32 was at a higher rate.
Hmm.
Below 32 was at a lower rate.
Yeah. So I think a lot of rationalization, honestly, genuinely has been done, like a
Yes.
5.4% effective rate cut. And I think Karan Bhasin did the calculation and he wrote that entire op-ed in the newspaper. I would recommend everyone go read that op-ed from Karan also, which shows like, boss, 5.4% is a giant cut. Beyond that, no government can afford a tax cut like this also. Like 5%. So how much do you anticipate this leading to a boost in consumption?
So I'll tell you that 5%, Kushal, is from where we started when we implemented GST to today.
Hmm.
So how much will it lead to a boost in consumption? I don't think there is a good way to validate that or even estimate that. Uh, SBI has put out a report where they have estimated the consumption boost to be about 3 lakh crores, and therefore with additional, the effective GST rate being about 10% now, they've said that additional collection will be 30 odd thousand crores. Therefore, the government will hardly lose anything, because whatever they have said they will lose because of the reduction in rate, they will make up in the boost for consumption. Now, whether it's going to be 3 lakh crore or any different number, we'll have to wait and see. But if you just go by basic principles, when there is a rate reduction, uh, there will be more money in the hands. Therefore, the consumption improves, number one. And number two, with a lower tax rate, there'll be more formalization that will happen. And therefore, there will be more that will come in. And again, there will be a higher tax collection.
Now, the office of the Honorable Finance Minister basically sent a message to everyone. He's like, if you guys don't reduce rates, we have our eyes on you.
So I'll tell you, this was there in the law, which is to say, and of course, it's there even today in the law, but there's no body to monitor this. Otherwise, it was the famous anti-profiteering body. The law says, and to just get a little technical, those who are interested to look up, Section 171 actually says if there's any benefit any business gets because of a rate reduction of GST or change in any input tax credit, there has to be a commensurate adjustment in the price to the consumer. Now, there was a body when GST came in, the National Anti-Profiteering Authority, which was examining these cases. So if you knew of a business which was not reducing price after a reduction in GST, you could write to them, and they would investigate and find out and recoup that money, and you could profit out of it. Now that's no longer there, which is the reason the FM is nudging. At this point, the government and the law is towards the businesses in good faith passing it on. But honestly, I have not seen any business which is not doing it. They've all come out voluntarily to say we will adjust the prices and pass on the full benefits.
Fair enough. Now let us look at this question is also good. Will more formalization happen with lower taxes in GST also? Do you think underbilling or black money and all of those problems, alleged problems of our economy, do you think that will come down because of this?
With lower taxes, it should come down.
Okay.
Especially essentials, biscuits, chocolates, a lot of these things going at 5% today. A lot more will get built in the chain, not get kept out, to say that without bill it will be, who doesn't mean paying 5% on those essentials today. So a lot more could get formalized, but there's a lot of work to be done there, because of course GST has improved that significantly. One, because of technology, all of it is on the network on GST, and all of it is electronic. There's not the manual paperwork, billing, manual returns. All of those days are gone. It's easy for the government to detect any underreporting, misreporting, non-reporting of transactions, but there's still more work to be done there.
Fair enough. Now there is something fundamental that you and I were want to discuss, that life before GST. Now,
Right.
I will give you an example of my life before GST. I am a person, after I quit my textile business full time, so I have seen life with GST and without GST. So in Maharashtra, what all did we have? We had that municipal tax. कभी वो LBT था, उसके पहले एक local Navi Mumbai tax था, And obviously, if you're in Mumbai, you have the local Mumbai municipal corporation tax. Then goods going into Mumbai had an octroi. That was one. Then obviously VAT, and the problems that with the VAT system was, because if it was an like Gujarat Maharashtra transaction, then it was a lesser tax rate, and most
Right.
of our business actually because of VAT went from Maharashtra to Gujarat. One of the
Right.
biggest reasons, a lot of outsourcing, people think that outsourcing happened from Maharashtra to Gujarat because of some giant labor issues. I'm not discounting the labor problems of Maharashtra, but the reality of things moving to Gujarat was, boss, people were like, wahan ka VAT rate sasta hai, I'm just going there, and then I will sell to Maharashtra at an even cheaper rate, because it's an
Yeah.
state to state transaction. So everybody preferred buying from Gujarat, and then the whole industrialization happened. Now with GST, that baseline level actually has become very similar. So now states are actually, don't you think, in the pre-regime and post-regime, this is my experience, states are actually competing on parity.
Yes, states are competing on parity. You're absolutely right. There's no rate differential that states can do today. The other thing, from a business perspective, I don't think I would have met any business man, any business which wants to go back to pre GST days purely from a administrative, ease perspective. Of course, there are problems with GST. There are things that have to be improved, and but at the same time, there was a recent survey which was conducted by one of the large consulting firms, and 85% of the respondents of MSMEs said that they are happy with GST. Now, what was happening in VAT? One thing is what you mentioned. And the second was there was a lot of these additional levies. Maharashtra had octroi, a lot of states had entry tax. So you would do all of those. That is one part of it. Second is, even if it was VAT, if a business was operating in 20 states, you had 20 different VAT laws. Those are not harmonized. 20 different types of returns to be filed, which were not common. Even today, if you have 20 state GST registrations, you have to file returns in 20 states, 20 GST returns, but there's a common return. So your ERP, how you collect data, your billing system, everything can be same. Whereas earlier, each VAT return was different, each VAT law was different. The credit provisions were different. A lot of things were different before GST came in. The other thing was logistics. You would remember when you were crossing a state border, you would know because these trucks were lined up at the state sales tax, VAT outpost to get things checked, get the papers checked, etc. And I don't have the data readily available with me, but there's enough work done on this to show that the number of kilometers trucks are covering post GST has increased significantly. The logistics cost has come down, the logistics time has reduced significantly. uh, Take the case Bangalore to Guwahati, Bangalore to Delhi, etc. Moving through 8, 10, 11, 12 states was a nightmare. Today those state borders are not there, and we've also got in e-way bill, which is electronic. You file, papers are with the truckers, it just goes. It's significantly improved without a doubt.
All right. One more thing in the old regime that I used to find very interesting is not everything was covered. And because of that, actually, the effective tax rates in terms of input cost used to be much higher. Like
Correct.
under the VAT regime, what was eligible for refunds? Am I right or
Yes.
am I wrong?
No, you're absolutely right. Because, see, in any indirect tax, a value added system, you pay tax on the value addition. Therefore, you get credit for the inputs paid. The moment you don't get credits, the moment there is a break in the chain, then the cost goes up. You're absolutely right. In the earlier system, it was not, clear. Number one. Number two, there was no system like we have today. Today, what happens? Businesses, when they buy from another business, we have to give our GSTN, and whatever is the credit appears in our electronic credit register directly, and then we take credit for that. Earlier there was a lot of misuse of credits. There were people who were doing this as a business to generate credits because they were all of paperwork. Of course, even under GST there are scams of input credit, etc., but those are being tracked, and they are able to catch those guys easily because of the entire thing being a electronic trail.
Fair enough. Now, one more thing that I don't understand is that why do you think like why could this not be done when GST was implemented in the first place?
So some of the procedural thing it could have been done, but remember when GST got implemented, the first and the foremost objective at that time for the finance minister, Mr. Arun Jaitley, was that he had to get us across the line. He had to get the states to agree. So there was a lot of give and take. Why is alcohol kept out of GST? Alcohol is kept out of GST because a lot of states rely on excise duty on liquor. So therefore, they said we will still, you will have the right to collect taxes on alcohol. We'll keep that out. Fuel was kept out. Petrol and diesel even today is outside GST, not within GST. But as per the GST framework, it is within GST, but the council has deferred. So states still collect. There was compensations, yes. There were many things like this, which was a give and take. The first few minutes of the GST council meetings are a fascinating read as to what states wanted, what was proposed by the center, what was proposed by Mr. Jaitley, what the officers did on a fitment committee on the goods, how there was even discussion whether it has to be 40%, 28%, because states were also wanting their revenue, because they were giving up their right to tax goods. Like you said, the parity today while states are competing is because they have lost the right to frame laws on goods tax. That's now done in a federal system together by the GST Council. Therefore, there was a lot of give and take. So the way I look at it, it was a politically compromised framework to begin with. We wanted to start, we got started. Of course, even he and everybody at that time realized that this was not really the perfect system, but we have to start and change it as we move along, which is why they had said, let 5 years go by, the compensation says stop, compensations go away, then we'll relook at rate rationalization, we'll relook at the slabs, etc. Was all known. This has not happened because of Trump or something like we are reading on social media. 2021 is when the first group of ministers for rate rationalization was set up. And that committee worked on it, took inputs. It got reconstituted because of state governments changing. The last one in December, when they were to submit the report, had 6 members, three from the opposition, one from Karnataka, one from Kerala, and one from West Bengal. And those 6 people on the group of ministers evaluated the entire rate structure. Once the prime minister announced, the center proposal was taken to them, and then they said, okay, this is fine, and that's how it went to the council, and council debated all of this and approved it. So whatever has happened, it's not like it's happened in 10 days or 20 days. So could it have been done earlier? It could have possibly have been done 1 or 2 years earlier. Few things changed. Then 21 is when they started looking at it for the first time. Then we had elections, etc. And the rate rationalization committee couldn't come to consensus. They sought a few deferrals. It got reconstituted. Therefore, it took some time. Could have been done a couple of years earlier, like everything else. Even GST could have got implemented 10 years earlier. So,
fair enough. Now, one more aspect of the GST thing is that why does Kerala oppose a lot of these things?
see, GST, you need to remember one thing, that a lot of this is also political. Somebody from Kerala had tweeted that this government took so many days and so many years to reduce GST on healthcare. It was just, I had to look up the minutes to see when GST on health insurance was discussed. And the minister from Kerala had actually said it should be taxed at 5%. And especially even possibly higher for premiums which are greater than 5 lakh rupees, coverage which is greater than. So if you see the minutes, you'll actually realize that the states, what they actually discuss inside the positions, etc., are very different from what happens outside. Outside, there's a lot of noise. Inside, and the way the council has been working, I think it's an example for how states and center can work together. A lot of this. Today, yes, there is noise, there's opposition. But the council has accepted all the proposals unanimously. There is no dissent by Kerala, Karnataka, etc. inside the council to say that we can't implement it. When the finance minister announced these as the recommendations of the GST Council on 3rd September, she said this is unanimous. Everybody has agreed for these changes. So there'll be some noise outside, and some of that is, the nature of politics in our country, I would say. Not really economics or taxation.
So somebody has asked, how easy or difficult will it be for the companies to take advantage of this GST cut in few months by increasing the base price with some upgrades? Like I said, the finance minister has said, I have my eyes on you.
Yeah. So see, base price with upgrades, etc., that could have been done whether GST reduces or not. Even if GST reduced or not, you could have increased the premium, you could have increased the base price. That's crop, that's a price, right? You have a willing buyer, willing seller at that price. That it's just that. Could they do this? I don't think anybody, any company, which is actually wanting to do good business and cares for its customer, will want to make money off a government decision of reduction in taxes. They would rather pass it on and reap the benefits of higher sales and higher volumes than really. You see what Mahindra has done. Mahindra has repriced all their cars as of today to say that we'll pass on the GST benefits much before 22nd September. That's as good as a discount. It's a reverse of what the question is. You actually offer a cash discount which is structured as a GST saving.
So do you know the lobbyists for the BD industry? No, seriously, like the BD industry somehow manages to, like,
Yeah.
BD per capita is more harmful objectively than cigarettes. I am not a cigarette smoker, nor am I endorsing smoking cigarettes. I believe you should not smoke cigarettes. I am very clear about it. But how did the BD walas manage?
Same.
manage?
I don't understand that as a concept. Never smoked, but at the same time, even it just beats me. See, one thing that I have 20 plus years in taxes, I've tried not to do one thing is marry logic and taxes. Taxes is just what's there in the law. A lot of the times it's just it is what it is, and the moment you go to find logic in some of these things, you'll trip. BD is one classic case. I have no idea why BD and cigarettes will be different. And it's not that one is good for the health and another is not.
Yeah, the funny thing is, at least cigarettes have a filter. BD is like, marja. It's like, just die. Why wait? Do it faster.
I don't think there is even quality control and quality check like you have in ITC.
Nothing. Nothing. It's just
You just
because it
roll
is.
what you get.
Yeah, you just roll and you're happy. And the funny thing is, that's how vote banks are. Like, if the middle class of this country would go on the streets, break shit up, create noise, create ruckus, they would be heard. But because they have a job, they have to go and do things, they have to follow things, they are the ones who bear the brunt. I hope and I'm glad the government has finally started listening to the middle class angst with the income tax slab change and now with this GST change. Now is the crux. Now, as a businessman so when I started my textile business in 2004-5, the fabric manufacturing, we were 70% export, 30% domestic. Somewhere around 8 and 9, I realized I don't want to be a businessman that relies on export at all. I realized that I think India is a growing economy and I want to enter the high quality
Hmm.
premium market of India, mid to high quality premium market of India, not the low quality stuff. And I slowly veered off and I literally reduced my export requirement of my business down to 10% of the overall production requirement.
Great.
We had 2 seasons in India primarily. Even Eid is no longer a season. Pehle teen hote the, but Eid also is no longer a season. It just gets clubbed because many times Eid and Diwali are so close by, so it becomes one common season.
Right.
Now there is one season which is Eid, Diwali. The other is wedding. Wedding is a serious season in India.
Hmm.
Do you think, with the government timing this at 22nd September, the Diwali being on 20th October, but the manufacturing of all of this being done before that, do you think the price trickle will all go into the Diwali season, which is the biggest consumption as far as domestic market is concerned in India?
Interesting question. See, it may not take until then. I'll tell you the reason because GST is a consumption based levy. Wherever the consumption happens, wherever the supply is, that's where that final rate is. So there could be some trickling thing, but even on stock which is already in the supply chain, 22nd September morning, you and I go and buy the new rate supply. It need not wait for something to trickle down. Uh, 22nd September is the first day of Navratri, fits in very well. But I think it also is the lead time given for the industry to get their pricing and everything right during these periods. Because even cars and everything, wherever they may be in the showroom, in the dealer, stockyard, factory, wherever. 22nd morning, the car is invoiced to you, it has to be at the lower rate. Now, that brings with it its own challenges, which is, let's assume the cars have been bought by the dealer at an earlier time with compensation says what happens to the credit. We are waiting for some of these clarifications that will take its time. I think this week and the next week, some of this will get sorted. But there's not too much of a trickle down time for that. The prices have to be on 22nd morning, it has to be different. So insurance, medical insurance, the food, essentials, what we saw, footwear, wherever the reduction has happened, you will see it on 22nd morning.
So one comment that Karan had made in their joint paper with Mr. Vermani and Karan, they had said that our estimates show that a 5, 15, 25% GST structure would be revenue neutral. A gradual simplification could be even revenue positive. But if the goal is to simplify GST and simultaneously boost growth, a revenue negative reform may be warranted. What are your comments on that?
So I'll tell you, when we started GST, the question was, should it be revenue neutral? Because then if it is revenue neutral, then nobody loses revenue. And then it's the same revenue that you're collecting. And Mr. Arvind Subramaniam had worked on the committee. It was his committee, and they had come up with this 15.5% to be the revenue neutral rate. And they had explored 2-3 options exactly like this, which is 12, 18, 25. I think it was 14, 22, and 25 or something like that. And that's when they arrived at these other rates. There were 2-3 things then. One was revenue neutrality. Second was you also had to have an eye on the inflation, because you couldn't have raised prices to take it to an inflationary situation. Therefore, some of the essentials were also priced at that 5%, and they created the 12% thing also to ensure that there's no inflation. Could they have, while they implemented it, done it negative, which is really to reduce the GST rates at such a level that you would not be revenue neutral, but you would be at a loss? Yes, they could have possibly done that, but that's what they've done today. Because today, if you see, there is a negative fiscal impact of the changes. Now, the revenue secretary was very clear, don't go by this 48,000 crores. It is based on 24 consumption, etc. But whatever are the proposals of the government that's been put out now of this reduction will result in a reduced GST if there is no demand, in boost in demand, both for the state and for the center.
Fair enough. So what do you think? Maybe we can keep the last 10 to 15 minutes on this very specific focus. What are the pending reforms, in your opinion, as far as GST and indirect taxation in India are concerned? Whether it's in form of further tax rejigs, these so-called rate barriers that we have created, or just single tax rate in the future, or what else could we do?
I personally don't think there is any need after this sort of wide rate rationalization that happened for them to tinker with the rates anymore on GST. I think we are good on rates. There's no need to be changing the rates every now and then, because you play around with the rates, there will be other issues that will come up with it, inverted duty structures and whatnot. So according to me, rate, I don't think we should be touching for some time. It should be stable. But there's a lot of work to be done on administration, on how tax officers are dealing with, especially on GST, of course, taxation as a whole. But GST, what happens is there's a added complexity because it is dual structure. So there's a state GST authority and a central GST authority. So a lot of the businesses today are getting similar questions from multiple states, some states taking different views. State officers, in my personal view, having dealt with quite a few of them in different states, not just 1 or 2 states, but a dozen odd states, are not as well trained. They come from the old VAT, central excise, the sales tax baggage. Therefore, there needs to be a complete change in the way the tax officers are approaching businesses. The kind of notices that are coming, the kind of issues that we've been seeing both on social media and mainstream media on issues around registration. Some of it has been simplified by some announcements in this GST Council recommendations, but there's work to be done there, 100%. The second area of work to be done is a little bit more on easing compliances, filings, maybe changing the periodic returns for some of the smaller taxpayers. There is a quarterly scheme for certain up to certain threshold. Maybe relooking at that. What do you do for ease of compliance on the technology on the GSTN platform? Website has been stable, but is there any improvement there? The the third aspect is litigation. Tax litigation is a huge pain. The GST tribunal, which is where you would appeal all of the orders, was not even set up. Just after these many years, 5 years of GST, sorry, 8 years of GST, and then we'd not even set up the tribunal that's got set up. The GST Council in it this time's meeting has said they'll start accepting appeals and they'll start hearing it before December. A huge litigation pent up there. So that clearing that, because you can't have a situation where you're fighting on a tax matter and that itself takes you 15-20 years. A lot of time of the businessman gets sucked into that. You want businessmen to be focusing on business, not on our tax litigation. So again, 3-4 things, big ones to be done. Rate, I think, is behind. I don't think they should tinker, but administration, ease of compliance and filings, and litigation being the big ones. That's where our focus needs to be. There is work to be done there. GST is nowhere close to being perfect and ideal. We are moving towards there. It's gotten better without a doubt, but there's a lot of work to be done.
Do you think a lot of this is because we are such a trust deficit society where the government doesn't trust the citizen, especially the Babu? Babu thinks every citizen is a chore, and the citizen thinks every bureaucrat is a chore. And somewhere between who is the bigger chore, this battle is fought, and everybody is just making each other's life miserable. Where they don't realize that if the Babu trusts a citizen, the citizen will actually end up doing more business. They end up doing more business just through the trickle down effect. We end up collecting more taxes and the country benefits. Maybe the Babu can have a better salary. So why is it, or the Babu thinks mere ko salary ki kya zarurat hai when I can collect a bigger bribe?
Trust deficit 100%. I've been dealing with tax officers for 23 years plus now. It's gotten better, but trust deficit 100% that is there. We've not been able to bridge that. The current finance minister has multiple times said that we'll have a citizen charter, treat taxpayers as customers. You need to be looking at differently. Even very recently, she was addressing the tax officers to say that we cannot be taking 6 months to pass orders, which are just to give effect to a court order, multiple such things. But the trust deficit is very high. Yes, every tax officer approaches all the taxpayers as somebody who's been avoiding things, doing things to avoid taxes, not pay the right amount of tax. And frankly, the taxpayers' record has also not been stellar on that. We've also had people who misuse the system. We've also had people who have not filed until you're pushed and, called up and summoned and things like that. Improving, both have to take the steps. But, here, this is where I believe that the government being, like you rightly said, taking the bigger picture to say if we make the first move and start trusting the taxpayers, there will be a positive environment. There'll be a greater compliance. There'll be a higher collection that will come with it. Of course, there'll be some things that will get lost in the, edges. And for that, we can't throw the baby with the bathwater and treat everybody as the same and, paint with the same brush. I think that's a move that the government will have to consider somewhere. But this has to be addressed. This is also impacting, the way foreign companies and investors look at us. It sometimes takes me humongous effort to even explain some of these things as to how it functions to overseas tax head, a global tax head who's dealing with tax officers in 100 plus countries, but then finds India very different. Of course, not peculiar. We have other countries which are notorious: Brazil, South Korea, Indonesia, Australia, all compete with us on this kind of a behavior. But I think there is work to be done there.
What is all this drama around health I mean, Monica had also shared something about
Yeah,
a 891 crore uh, scam that was found out, and actually usko zero karna hai, but the companies, insurance companies itself are resisting. Like, what is this? They were claiming
I'll tell you.
refunds falsely. What is all that?
So that's a completely different story, and that's one of somebody who had to uh, defraud and do something wrong. But the fundamental issue is very different. It is what happens is, like I said a while earlier, GST is a value added tax. So you pay tax on the value addition that you do. So you buy something for 50 rupees and then you sell it for 100 rupees. On 50, assume you have paid 18% GST. You would have paid 9 rupees. On 100, you'll have to pay 18. You get a input credit for that 9 and you deduct that and pay the balance. Therefore, you end up paying GST only on the value addition. So therefore, if health insurers were until now charging, say, 1,000 rupees premium, on which they would collect 180 from you and me at 18%, they would set off the GST that they have paid on their inputs. It could be on reinsurance, it could be on the commission that they pay the agents for securing business, rent, other fees, etc. They would knock that off. Now, what happens is that 1,000 on the output is not liable to GST. Therefore, the 1,000, there's no 180 GST that they have to pay, which means the GST that they have paid on their inputs cannot be used up and that becomes a cost. So the short point is that even though GST has become zero, you may not see a 18% reduction in the premium, which is difficult for a normal person who doesn't understand input tax credit and how GST works to understand, because they'll go and tell the insurers, there was a 18% GST that was there and it's gone, and why is your premium not reducing by 18%?
उसका input cost तो है ना,
So
set off
what the
मिलेगा, input cost तो same रहा ना.
no. So if input cost was say 100 and 18 GST, earlier the cost was only 100, that 18 was coming back. Today the cost becomes 118 suddenly. So their cost goes up. Their cost goes up by a small percentage. Now, which is why insurers, interestingly, before this zero discussion started, said keep it at 5%. Then what happens is the consumer sees it as a 13% fall in the GST. From 18 to it's become 5. They will be able to pass on the entire 13 because they would have some input tax credit which they can set off against this. Now it's become zero, so they'll not be able to pass on the full. But interestingly, some of the insurers have come and given a statement to say we will bear that input cost that we are losing and we'll pass on full 18%. So it could happen that some of them pass on full 18, some of them, uh, reduce by 15%, 13%, depending on their cost structure. So, but that does not necessarily mean that they are profiting from that. There is a
No,
loss that they'll be there.
if you look at private insurance coverage in India, also there is such a giant scale up to be done there. Don't you think this should be taken as an opportunity by all these insurance companies? कि हाँ भाई ठीक है, थोड़ा profit कम हो रहा है, but we can cover up by increasing our market share. More and more people will be encouraged to take
I would
insurance now.
agree. Which is how I think they will look at it. One. Second, see, people who today could have anyway afforded that 18% premium and 18% GST, and for them that premium was still okay, may end up increasing their cover, right? With the same premium. Because instead of paying 1,180 in our example as an insurance premium, today instead of paying 1,000 rupees, you will say, I'll continue to pay 1,180. You please increase my cover. So
Yes.
it will increase the business for the insurers. And I think most of the
I do
sane
it
and
with my health insurance every year. I increase my coverage amount because I don't claim anything. So I just keep increasing my health
yes.
insurance amount.
So the smarter insurers may look at it the way you are telling, which is to say, let's bear the 3, 4, 5%, whatever it is. They give us increased business and we'll knock that off rather than hold back, pass on. I've heard a couple of them already make public statements to say that they will pass on the full GST.
Fair enough. I think that is the more practical thing to do. I think most people don't realize how untapped the insurance market of India is. Most Indians are still uninsured, and and they don't realize how big the scope is. And that's the reason so many private insurance companies are still entering the market, because they know it's a sunrise industry in India. It's not an industry that is dying. It is actually an industry with a massive growth potential.
And it's not like our Ayush Bharat and all of those other things, which is social schemes are so prevalent and available for everybody that it covers everyone for everything. We still need private insurance, most of us.
Yeah, I think a healthy system, insurance system, is one where there is a public and private partnership, where there are some public avenues with private options available, and you should be
Yeah.
able to choose whichever one you want to. I think the. Do you think the hospitals will be happy with this new insurance thing? Like, what do you make? Like, the hospitals would think of it.
So hospitals, two parts. One is I think medical insurance really I don't think will make a big difference. It may be that some of the hospital GST will also become a cost. There could be some small, but the larger thing is for the hospitals. A lot of the medical equipment, the GST has come down, including something as small as thermometers and all of that. But that it's come down. This GST has been reduced on a lot of the life-saving drugs. So overall healthcare GST impact should also be positive.
All right, fair enough. Well, okay, this question is, what about the ITC accumulated up to 22nd September? Will it be added back to cost of product, or we can claim subsequently? If not, how can we avoid it?
So ITC, if your output is still liable, then you can anyway claim it. The problem will come for some of the things. I'm just thinking stationary, where it's become zero. Then if there is ITC, may become a cost unless the government comes out with some specific interim measure to say that whatever stock is already accumulated, we'll allow you to either claim as a refund or use it up against other things. There could be some schemes, but otherwise, technically, if it becomes zero, then your ITC is a cost after that, where there is a goods which is at 5 or 18 or 12 or whatever, and it's become zero from 22nd September.
Fair enough. I hope the all those questions are answered. Before we wrap up, Ajay, do you think there is anything in particular that we did not cover?
No, I think we've covered everything quite comprehensively, Kushal. I think most important is the whole background, why some of these were the way they were and what has really changed. And most important, we covered was what is still left. I think that's a big piece that we need to be talking about now.
All right. Ajay, as always, thank you very much for coming.
Thank you.
I wish there were more people who explained things like you, but unfortunately in India there are not.
Thank you so much. Pleasure to be on this always.
All right, guys, we will wrap it up. If you want to follow Ajay, he is there on X. So you can follow him on X. The handle is there in the description of the podcast. Go follow him on Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it right now, if you've not done that. As far as the Cārvāka podcast is concerned, the Cārvāka podcast runs only on one-time donations, whether on UPI or through Interac Canada or through a monthly membership program on YouTube or Patreon. If you can, do consider joining those. Whether you want to buy the the merchandise of the Cārvāka podcast, or you want to buy my book, every detail is there in the description. Whether you're listening to the audio version or watching this on YouTube, keep supporting the Cārvāka podcast. Like this video, subscribe to the Cārvāka podcast YouTube channel, and do leave a comment in the comment section. I will see you guys next time. Until then, namaste, take care.